But if we had those 4 studies, I am confident, not that we would necessarily reverse the decline, but we would know what is happening.
Welcome to Wild Turkey Science, a podcast made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Marcus Lashley, Professor of Wildlife Ecology at the University of Florida.
And I'm Dr. Will Goolsby, Professor of Wildlife Ecology and Management at Auburn University. We're both lifelong hunters and devoted scientists who are passionate about hunting, managing, and researching wild turkeys.
In this podcast, we'll explore turkey research, speak to the experts in the field, and address the difficult questions related to wild turkey ecology and management.
Our goal
is to serve as your connection to wild turkey science. Well, we're back.
I'm glad you finally showed up.
I know, man. See, we're like a half hour delayed on. There's an hour difference in time, and then we're also a half hour off on our
scheduling to record today because I got done teaching class and scurried back to my office and logged in and
nestled in there.
I'm just sitting there all, proud and ready to go and made sure I got, everything out of my teeth, and then you never showed up.
Classic. Well,
but I hear we're not getting off this topic.
No, I don't think we're ready to, and based on our audience, I don't think they're ready for us to either. At least some of them, because we got a lot of feedback from the last episode, and that it's already one of our more popular episodes, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of closed that episode with a thought that seemed to resonate with a bunch of people, and even you've talked to some people now, and it sounded like maybe then even. But, I don't like the idea that a bunch of turkey enthusiasts are divided. That's really what it boils down to. I feel like we have these camps where we've got the adamant habitat folks, and then we got the adamant predator trapping folks. There's a ton of people that are probably in the middle that just aren't super vocal, but there's definitely groups that are on those two. We'll call them extremes. Not that that's an extreme point of view, but they're just opposite of one another in their point of view.
Yeah, and we see this a lot with various types of hunting too. There's camps. There's even with deer hunting, there's people that bait, people that don't, people that run dogs, people that don't.
Right.
Turkeys, decoys, no decoys, 12 gauge, 410. But this one's particularly divisive.
Yes, it's particularly divisive in the turkey enthusiast community, and I feel like you and I are in the middle, but that kind of predisposes us, especially with the visibility we have with the podcast and all, to be attacked by both sides sometimes and celebrated by both sides and other times.
Yeah, believe it or not, we have been attacked before by habitat first and only people.
Yeah.
For saying some of the things that we have about predators.
Yeah, we're using the word attack. That's probably strong.
Yeah.
Like, people will give us negative feedback or get clearly flustered about something that's said and been out of shape about it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. We need that dialogue, and as long as we can keep it productive, I think that's fine. But sometimes it seems like these communities end up in this never-ending argument, where it's just they're talking past each other. And the way I posed it to you, I think would be potentially really productive to do here, where everybody can hear it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so here's the question. If we had, let's say we got a declining turkey population, and we know that nesting success is fairly low, let's say 25%, because that's what we're averaging, it seems like, across a bunch of studies now. Let's say we've got 25% nesting success, and the majority of that nest failure is because of predation, based on whatever study.
Yeah.
That's very consistent, right?
Yeah, and that's a common finding.
Yeah, we commonly will find predation as the leading cause of loss as it was measured from a hen that was radio tagged that sat on a nest. Something happened to the nest. The researchers come in and determine what they think happened based on the evidence present and potentially with other things like genetics. Uh, there could be other sources of data, but that collection of evidence tells the person what they think it was. Well, when we group all that together within a population and then get the average nest loss, the leading cause is pretty much across the board predation.
Right.
Is that accurate?
It is.
So let's think about that for a minute. What would happen if we continued to nesting success if we continue to increase predator abundance?
I would
What is the
predict that
logical?
logically it would nesting success would continue to decrease.
Because of increased predation, right?
Right.
I think that's perfectly logical, and that is the predator crew. I think that's the logic that's being used there, and that's perfectly logical.
I'm glad that's logical because I'm still like made it another day through life without being crazy. So
One day at a time,
that
man. One day at
affirmation,
a time.
that
You know
affirmation
what? I
is
don't
good.
even remember yesterday. I don't. So, okay, well, let's do the same thing for habitat. What do you think is if we took the same population and we steadily decreased habitat quality such that nesting cover is getting poorer and poorer in distribution or quality or abundance, what do you think would happen to nesting success?
It would continue to go down just the same as it did with increasing predators.
Yes, that's the point right there. The nesting success would decrease. We can all agree on that. And it would also decrease because of elevated predation,
Right.
principally.
Exactly. So kind
So
of
now, yeah, go ahead.
so I didn't want to summarize it for you if that's where you're going.
That's what I
Uh,
was doing. But,
okay, go ahead. I'll let you do it.
well, if what we're looking at, the data point is nesting success and the proportion that is predation. But the outcome of predators being a problem because they're becoming hyperabundant is lower nest success because of increased predation, and the outcome of habitat quality declining is lower nest success because of increased predation. The data point that we measure and publish in the research that's being used is not actually speaking to either argument.
Yeah, we have inadequately isolated variables to be able to answer this question.
Yeah, they're well, and there's another problem with it that we mentioned in the last episode. They're also conflated.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is as you decline in habitat quality, you tend to increase in predator abundance and efficiency with the ones relevant to
Yeah.
turkeys. So they're also interacting.
That's what I was going
And
to say. This is a classic ecological interaction
yeah,
where the response to one input is dependent on the response to another.
yeah. And they'll look, if you only have one side of the equation, it will support that side of the equation because the both sides are correlated.
Yeah.
So, and we have not detangled those two issues.
Yeah.
And here's where the rubber meets the road. If if we have a predator abundance problem and it continues to grow and grow, well then that may not be related to habitat, and fixing habitat isn't the solve necessarily.
Yeah.
Just like if habitat quality has declined and declined, and then we go in and implement trapping because predators are the loss of all the nests. Well, predators aren't actually the cause; they're the symptom.
Yep.
So then, if we think about it, I think you gave a medicine analogy, and I think that's good. Like if I had a pinched nerve and it was causing me to have migraines, and then I go to the doctor and they just keep giving me meds to treat migraine
Yeah.
and don't address the underlying issue, that doesn't make sense.
No.
Right? Like you
Yeah.
might use it to ward off the migraine, but ultimately you want to fix the source of the
Yeah,
problem.
you got to fit. The problem is further upstream.
Right. And right now, we haven't actually identified the source of the problem.
Right.
We have a measure that actually doesn't detangle what the problem is.
Yeah. So the way that I think about it most simplistically, because I am a simple man and a simple-minded one at that, is that
Simple.
in both
All right, Leonard.
in both cases, you would expect, as the symptom to be like low nest success, right? Like low nest
Mhm.
success and low brood survival could be symptomatic of a predator problem and a habitat problem.
Most likely, in most cases, it's a combination because poor habitat quality leads to increased abundance and efficiency of predation too.
Well, that's the point that we've made many times, but I think the one that you and I really wanted to focus on today was to explain to people that the other side using data to support their perspective, whether they fall into that habitat centric camp or that predator centric camp, is accurate, right? So like,
Yeah, you
the,
are.
the,
It can be a data. In fact, it could be the same data point being used
yes,
to support either argument, and it's equally strong and also equally weak. I think is
it
the way I
is.
put it to you.
That's exactly right.
Because it's an imperfect story, it doesn't actually detangle the argument
Right. So if I
components.
am on a habitat centric Facebook page and I have somebody come over on there that says predator control is the solution, like look at this paper, they might be right
Yeah,
based on the data that they have available to them in the paper and the way
yeah,
that it was collected. And the same is true if I go on a trapping Facebook page and I have a habitat guy coming on there arguing y'all shouldn't be spending this time trapping, this is a habitat problem. They're
yeah,
With the data that we have, both are correct
yeah.
or could be
Or have
correct.
both have an equal opportunity to be correct.
That's
The data
important.
doesn't actually disprove either side
It
or
doesn't.
prove either one for that matter. And it doesn't even support either one, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Man, that was a short episode. I think we
Yeah, we wrap that up. Well, I wanted to be direct about it because I'm
Yeah.
tired of the division. Like we're all in this for more turkeys, and we're about conservation of turkeys, and I don't think that's the argument is necessarily healthy in many
Yeah.
situations. The way that I see it play out,
Right.
and I think it's unfortunate. What we really need to do is what you and I keep saying, where we experiment and isolate the factors.
Exactly.
And you could do that through a manipulative habitat experiment and track how that affects nest success and the rate of predation. So you could demonstrate whether or not predation is regulating nest success through predation rates or habitat. Did I say that right? Habitat's regulating predation through nest success or nest success through predation. You know what I mean. It's a circle.
Hopefully everybody else does too.
I'm just jumping in the circle at different places. That's all. So uh, uh, we could. So that study needs to be done, and also the predator manipulation study,
Mhm.
where you go in and trap in a robust experimental design and see how that. And ideally, we would do those together.
Yeah.
And the quail literature shows us that we should expect. I
Yeah.
would say we would predict that they would augment one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Habitat probably has a larger effect size because that's what's consistent with the studies we do have.
Mhm.
That's what my prediction would be, in other words, that has a larger effect size, and it makes sense because it affects more of the biology of the species and all the interactions. And then predation would play an important role, but if you don't have the habitat to overcome the compensatory sources of mortality, the predation won't work.
Yeah.
So you have to have adequate habitat for the predation trapping to work.
Yeah.
And
And
then
another like interesting little wrench to throw in all of this, thinking about it from an ecological perspective is that a lot of the habitat management practices that we implement to increase turkey populations create more prey for predators,
yeah,
right?
so it's
So,
not just that it's decreasing habitat quality for
yeah.
some of them, it also creates alternative opportunities for the
Yeah.
predator.
So it creates alternative opportunities for the predator, but it also would inflate predator abundance or supplement predator abundance in that area, so that yes, the predation rate could theoretically, I'm not saying that this would necessarily happen, but it could increase in response to improving habitat quality. But if it increases at a rate that is lower than the increased, nest success and brood survival attributable to the habitat factors, then that is
I'm
how
gonna
you get a net positive benefit of habitat improvement.
I'm gonna need you to draw this.
Did I take that too far?
Yeah, I don't know what the heck you just said.
We've reached your limits, huh?
I can't go any further. I can't.
All right. So
Yeah, let's run that back.
when you improve habitat quality, you potentially increase prey base for predators, right?
Oh yeah,
But concurrent with increasing the prey base, you might get an increase in predator numbers, but you're also benefiting turkeys, their hiding ability, and
yeah,
decreasing the predator's hunting efficiency at the same time. So the
yeah.
key is, if you would expect that if habitat is going to benefit the turkey, then the overall net positive for the turkey outweighs the negative from the predator side. So
Yes.
I brought that up not to prove a point, but rather to help folks understand how complicated this issue is and
Hmm.
understand that it's all interconnected.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And I wanted to give you a pat on the back. We'll say, because last time you shook me a little bit on one of the things.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I got shook, and it was the raccoon thing. The
The
raccoon
data
trapping.
on trapping?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Canada trying to get rid of rabies.
Right.
So I, that got me digging around, and I ended up in one of these rabbit holes.
Good, it's you that's wasted all the time this week, not me.
Well, I think we're sharing our
Yeah.
wasted time, but hopefully our audience doesn't see it as wasted time
I think we call that
because
collaboration, right?
yeah, and it's challenging us. And man, when you laid that bomb on me, I was like, wait a minute, we can have really great success, and then what is regulating the population such that it could bounce back in a year?
Oh, so is that what you looked into?
Yeah, so I ended up all in the middle of what regulates mesocarnivore populations.
Yeah.
And I found some stuff I've
What'd you
never seen
find?
before. Well, so let me just recap the raccoon thing. 30 square miles, I think, right?
Right.
They're trying to
18,000
eradicate,
18,000 acres.
yeah. They're trying to get rid of raccoons to the best of their ability. It's not really feasible to eradicate them from the landscape, but they're trying to get as close to that as possible because of the rabies scare.
Mhm.
They found a few positives and they're trying to prevent that from spreading. So they trap for 25 acres or something for a few weeks, right?
That's right. Trap per
Uh,
one trap per 25 acres for 2
yeah,
weeks.
so pretty solid effort over a 30 square mile area. They're operating at a really large scale, really cool. They didn't have any immigrate in from the surrounding because they had them
Mhm.
tagged, and they successfully decreased the raccoon population based on a mark recapture effort that gives a pretty good estimate by 90%. And then by year two, the next time you would start trapping raccoons, they were back to normal or even exceeding that
Or
in some
even
areas within
yeah.
the
Yeah.
which then that's what shook me. I was like, wait a minute. They first of all got it. They
I
decreased
noticed
by 90%
yeah.
and it bounced back to 100% in one season.
I
How?
noticed that you had really latched on to that.
Yeah, it bothered me and I couldn't let it go. So
Well,
you're
I'm
about to
glad you
see the
didn't.
you're about to see the fruits of that labor right here.
Okay.
So I started looking. I was like, well, what actually regulates populations? And I found some cool stuff that's, I mean, basically hot off the press. So the first paper I dug up is from Burgos or Burgos, Tamara Burgos, Burgos.
I'm glad
you,
it's you today.
yeah, yeah. So Burgos et al. Published this paper in 2023 in Scientific Reports,
Wait,
and
is
well,
that not pronounced bourgeois?
I think it's bourgeois. There's a
Okay.
silent R in it.
Okay. That was an awful joke, I know. You know what's funny though is I've gotten to the point now where when my jokes in class fall flat, I used to be mortified. Now I don't
Yeah.
even care. I just keep moving.
Just keep going.
Well, just pretend that one didn't happen.
Yeah. So anyway, I ended up on this paper, and it was the first one I looked at, and it had two mesocarnivores. It was a stone marten. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe Charlotte can cut it into the YouTube picture of a stone marten.
I'm picturing
And
some kind of weasel.
yes, almost certainly, it's a little long black mammal.
Okay. A ferret.
And a common genet, and I don't even know what that looks like, but they said it's a mesocarnivore. So
Okay.
we'll cut that one in too.
Common.
And they have very different dietary plasticity, and that was important to the study. But what they were looking at is a top predator had been reintroduced in the study area, and that was the Iberian lynx. And I have a pretty good idea what that looks like. A big
Yeah,
cat.
you know what a lynx looks like. So a common genet is it looks like a cross between a bobcat and a raccoon.
That's exactly what I was picturing. It's a raccoon cat.
Yeah, it's kind of got those big eyes and big ears, but then it
That's how
has
you
like
know they're good at eating turkeys.
then it has a ring tail. Okay.
Anyway, um, they were this area. They restored the Iberian lynx population, and they basically during that process looked at how those two mesocarnivores, their populations were affected by the abundance of the top predator. And I just found it kind of remarkable that when it all settled out and the population settled, they suppressed the mesocarnivore abundance by 10 times.
By 10 times.
Yeah, that's what it says, 10
Like
times.
they reduced it like to a tenth of its previous level. Is that what they mean?
The lynx getting established reduced those two mesocarnivores populations by tenfold,
Okay.
which is remarkably similar to what they got out of that trapping effort with raccoons.
Yeah.
And I just found that interesting.
Well, that was the other interesting thing that we briefly touched on in that last episode where I talked about, they noticed in those little patches where they were monitoring birds in California that when coyotes were present, the nest
Yeah.
predators tended to go down.
I know you brought that up and how it would affect nest predation, and you teased me with it,
Yeah.
and you got me all in the middle of that.
Okay. I'm
I
glad
didn't find
I
that
could do that.
paper, but I was hoping you'd cover that one.
Yeah. I've still got my notes on it if you want me to pull them out.
Yeah, do it, man. Why not? So I was like, wow, that's the same. So then I went back and they said the title of this paper was Top Down and Bottom Up Effects Modulate Species Coexistence.
Yeah.
And then I just searched bottom up and top down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came across a paper that's written by Cano Martinez. It's a dash name. And it's called Bottom Up Rather Than Top Down Mechanisms Determine Mesocarnivore Interactions in Norway.
I've read that paper. It was several years ago, but I remember that title.
Well, it wasn't this one. There's another one like that, but this one is a preprint. It's in review right now.
Oh, okay.
So
But I haven't
definitely
read
wasn't this one, but there's several things like this, and I'm just going to cover a couple of them. But I wasn't using the right terminology when I was searching. Is what the big light bulb came on. I was like, oh,
there's
all right. And then I
of
just
papers out there on top down versus bottom up
yes, and when I got the correct lingo in Google Scholar, it just opened the door.
Yeah,
to all this really interesting stuff. So this one says bottom up rather than top down mechanism. So all that means is food is influencing abundance more or rather than predation. So the lynx could eat all the mesocarnivores, but food abundance is regulating their population more than the predator. That's what that means.
Yeah.
So that piqued my interest, and I went on there, and we'll link all these just like always. So the take-home message in this paper was that while the top-down control does influence the number, which other paper said 10 times, they said bottom-up effects are way more important, basically.
Mm.
So the effect size of the bottom-up was much greater. And I was like, so food abundance is more important, and they had a tenfold. Now, they aren't apples to apples because they're different species in the studies. But it was interesting that food was more important than predation risk.
Right.
So then I started thinking about, well, what happened to that raccoon population and the role that feeding might play. Because what are we doing everywhere? We got
feeding
all the corn you can eat, baby, if you're a raccoon, anywhere you're standing. So I started looking into this, and I found another paper, and it is, remember page 4. I'm on page 4 right now. It is called The Ecological Effects of Providing Resource Subsidies to Predators. I have never seen that. I know the lead author, Tom Newsom. He's in Australia. I know the guy. I've been at conferences with him and worked on some stuff with him. He did some of the work in Yellowstone on the wolves and all that. He worked for Bill Ripple on the wolf Yellowstone elk thing, I think.
Okay.
So, but I've known him for a while, and I don't know him well, but I am acquainted with him at conferences and whatnot. So I started digging around, and I was like, okay, they've got a section on how resource subsidies affect predator abundance. So then I started looking around in there to see where. So this is a meta-analysis. They dug around, found all the literature they could find on this topic, which I've been looking for, but had problems finding.
Yeah,
but
you wouldn't have expected it there.
Putting it all together in one place.
Yeah, you wouldn't have expected it there. It's in the.
No, not with the group of terms that they used.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
It's just different lingo and different facets of ecology, and it can hide stuff from you. So I got to reading around, and I just kept hitting these aha moments. But here's what the first one was. Most compelling was this is about the direct effects of resource subsidies on predator abundance. Okay. Most compelling was the work of, we're going to say Fedriana et al., 2001, who compared coyote density across a gradient of food availability from anthropogenic sources. So basically people pouring out food for stuff. Or trash or whatever. It's from people. Doesn't have to be pouring it out, I guess. The human provided food by coyotes was greatest, or where it was the greatest, where they, the majority of their diet was from human food for coyotes. There was an 8-fold increase in coyote density.
Okay. That's a lot.
8 times as many predators by having access to that food.
That's a lot.
For coyotes.
Yeah.
And it's sustained at that's remarkable. So, and that's anthropogenic food. They don't, they're kind of speaking in generalities. I'm sure the food could differ across some of the studies what that was, but
yeah, probably some of it. I mean, I bet it could be like from farms, from trash, from all sorts of stuff.
So here it gets equally gooder. It's an oxymoron and not a word, isn't it? But that's what I thought of. So they went on to say similarly large increases in abundance or density from Denny et al. 2002 and Shapira et al. 2008 reported 7-fold increases in cats, like domestic cats.
Yeah.
Or like feral cats,
Yeah.
and red foxes. So both of those were sevenfold increases when they had access
Mm.
to subsidies.
Yeah.
Which some of the ones with foxes, I'm almost 100% certain are corn.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, we talked about that a little bit in that last episode where um I was talking about that meta-analysis, right? And we were
mhm,
looking at various ways to reduce a variety of human wildlife conflicts with mesopredators, these same species. And they talked about how one of the ones they looked at was diversionary feeding.
mhm.
Um, but that, yeah, I think you were probably looking at one of those papers where they noted the distribution of carnivores is closely related to human food sources. Generally, feeding wildlife poses high risk of causing conflicts and should be avoided.
Mhm.
That was probably one of the papers they cited behind that statement because I remember there were
Ma
three papers cited right there.
Yeah, maybe this one, they were analyzing everybody's work up
Yeah.
till this point, which this was, uh, published in 2014, so there's probably a lot of work since then even.
Hmm. So, so does this tie back into what you were talking about with the raccoon population rebounding so quickly in that removal
Y
zone?
Well, I don't know if it does in that specific research area, but here's
Right.
my point. What my why I got all interested in this and ended up in this rabbit hole. If we are subsidizing predators, that is more important than the top control, and it would allow a population to rebound and be sustained at a higher density as well.
Yeah, exist at unnaturally high levels.
And I know, I mean, everybody out there knows if you put corn out there, raccoons are going to be in it.
Hmm.
So after seeing the at 30 square mile area where 90% of them were removed and they're right back to normal the next year, and then also seeing this data from a variety of things where food availability is regulating their abundance and can also sustain them at extremely high abundance,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried about that. So, and then you don't fix it
Yeah.
by removing them because they're able to just bounce right back.
So let me get this straight. We went into this conversation in the last episode trying to talk about why we're more likely to talk about habitat management versus predator control for increasing turkey populations. And then that led us to this episode where we're talking about how both sides of that argument could use the same data set to argue their point to
Because it doesn't actually
accurately
address either.
because we don't have things parsed out like we need to.
Mhm.
And here we are
And that's
once
creating
again, and we're
division,
talking about how corn corn may be causing a problem for turkey. I'm
which
just
just
trying to
poured
connect the dots for folks because here we are on corn again.
which just poured fuel all over the fire
Oh
that's causing
man.
this division. But I think it's
Do you
important
have
to.
anything to say about decoys?
No, I don't. I'm going to let you take that one on. But, like, this is the thing. We have such a massive literature base. You and I could do this for the next year, and
Oh,
we'll
for sure.
uncover stuff over and over, which is
Yes.
one reason y'all need to tune in because we are doing that, and we find stuff like this that is like striking, and we had no idea it existed.
And it may
There's
pop up in some
10,000
random
papers on this already.
episode. Yeah, and it may pop up in some random episode in September.
Yeah. So, uh, but when I saw that, I was like, man, we're creating this division on a data point that doesn't address either, and we're all worried about predator abundance being an issue, whether that be because of habitat declining quality or because of the lack of fur trapping or whatever. And we're also, some of the same people even are out there feeding raccoons and every other thing that will eat corn subsidizing them so that they can do things like recover from a 90% removal in 1 year and potentially persist at 7 or 8 times the density on the land. Like, what?
Hmm.
Does that not just feel a little bit weird?
Yeah. I mean, this is a conversation that you and I have had before about, sometimes we seem to be trying to satisfy one objective and doing something that is inconsistent with moving towards that objective at the same time. We've kind of had that conversation before, but introducing these data to this conversation, I think, makes it a little bit less, hypothetical and more
Yeah,
like
like this
this
is
is we should be paying
real
attention to
data.
this. We should
We
really
don't.
be paying attention to this.
Yeah, I'm worried about it, man. And it doesn't seem that there's a large portion of we're going to quote unquote turkey enthusiasts that don't seem to care.
Yeah,
Or I don't know if it cares. Cares not the right word. That's the wrong word. They care,
but
but
they're not paying
we're
attention.
we're not willing to take what I don't know how to put it, but it's like that issue isn't relevant. And
Yeah,
to me, I don't see how it's not
yeah, I agree.
because it's striking. And then I dig around in the literature and I find something like that. It literally gave me chills when I saw that.
Yeah, I'm thinking right now back to a conversation that you and I recently had, um, where we were talking about what we would do research wise with a certain amount of money. Like, I don't remember the exact context of the conversation, but it was something along the lines of if you knew you had, let's just say, $1 million, right, to do whatever
Mhm.
ever study you wanted. Um, which topic would be the first one that you would take on? That wasn't the exact context, but it was something along those lines. And you said that you would do a study that focused on the effects of feeding on turkey populations. And we had been discussing prior to that within the same conversation doing a study on predators, right? Trying to isolate
Mhm.
for effects of predators. And that's one that I'm really excited about, obviously, because it's something that's, a hot topic right now. People are
Yep.
very interested in it. They want to know. I want to be able to give good advice to landowners regarding that topic. We've identified all the holes in that literature in previous episodes, and predators fascinate me. It's something that I've worked on in the
Mhm.
past. There's a lot of good reasons for me
That
to
is a
work on that.
really, really important issue.
There's a
No
lot of
question.
good reasons for me to work on that, but when you said that about feeding being one of your number one issues, I stopped and I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I think he's right because,
It's the one thing for me that could be having a dramatic effect. We don't have the smoking gun stuff, but it's also something that affects almost everybody involved in the
well,
Southeast,
and
at least.
two, it's another one of these things, and maybe I shouldn't say treat it as similar to the others because maybe it's so outstanding that it's more important than any of the others, but it's so multifaceted, right?
Mhm.
So it could, we're talking right now, you just heard direct evidence of how that could potentially supplement nest predator populations or predator populations in general, not just the nest ones. And in addition, we talked about and detailed it very thoroughly in previous episodes how it could affect turkeys on the other end, right? So it could,
Mhm.
by causing disease or, exposing them to toxins.
Yeah, weaken the
Um,
immune system.
Right. So it's number one, it's so multifaceted. It affects this whole issue in multiple ways, but more perhaps even more importantly than that, I'm not sure yet because I'm still working through this, but making that change, or let's look at it, making the change to benefit turkeys from a predation standpoint versus a baiting and feeding standpoint, it is night and day how easy the
It is
stopping
to yeah.
feeding and baiting solution is
Mhm.
compared to the predator control solution. It's also
Yeah, or
night
the
and
habit
day.
yeah,
To be
or the
fair,
habit.
exactly. To be fair, it's a lot easier to stop feeding and baiting than it is to manage habitat, right? And
Hmm.
so this is a landscape scale issue that that affects turkey populations in multifaceted ways that all we have
Potentially.
to do is stop it.
Yep. That's what is interesting to me is it is easy, but there are many that don't see it that way
I know.
for
I
whatever
know there aren't.
reason. And the other thing that I think the predator trapping is probably a second in this, but this issue is unfundable. Like, who's going to fund it?
Right.
Unless we get a GoFundMe together and raise that money, I don't see how it's going to get funded. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
nobody wants it, and I think that's what it is for me. Is like if we had the data, I really hope that it's not an issue. I really, really hope that because if it is, man, we're gonna have issues dealing
We're
with it.
way behind the 8 ball.
Yes, and I know I don't want it to be a problem, but I would like to know because I want to know what's going on here.
Absolutely.
And I think you kind of lined it out. From my perspective, there's really four issues that I really would love to see strong experimental, replicated studies to inform our management and conservation of turkeys.
Mhm.
And those four things, the feeding is definitely one of those. Habitat manipulation causing a vital rate response is another one. Trapping, with it, connecting that in a robust experimental design to vital rate response is another one. I'd love to interact to those two.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the other one that I think is really important and topical and relevant across the range is how hunting is playing a role in the, like the season
Yeah, just
framework, timing,
harvest
all that stuff.
harvest management questions
That
in general.
that connecting it to manipulating
Mhm.
that and connecting it to
Mhm.
a vital rate response like hen nesting success and all that. Those are for me the issues that I don't care who addresses it. I just think they are needed so that we understand those roles because we know all of those things have strong potential to be at play here. And the reality is probably some combination of these factors. But uh, I would love to see that work done. And I will participate in whatever part I can fund, and I would love to see whoever else in the research community that can do it do whatever other parts of it. Like we just need the data, and I'll be the first one in line to share it, buddy.
You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy to me? I agree with your top 4 100%, and which is not surprising because both you and I, our opinions on this have been formed through conversation with each other,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah. I have moved on this a lot because of all this the podcast. Really.
But if you think about this for a second, Marcus, like each of those studies is a relatively big ticket item, right?
Hmm.
Um, let's just say that, I mean, you could do a damn good predator study, a habitat study, um, a season framework study, and a feeding and baiting study. Each of those, let's just say that you had $1 million, right, to do any of those. You could do a fine study on all 4 of those topics, $1 million each, right?
Hmm.
I feel confident. I'm gonna overstep my bounds right here, and that's fine. I'm gonna go not overstep my bounds, but go out on a limb. You okay with that?
Yeah. It depends on what species of limb is it.
A
Is it a
hickory.
willow?
Maybe it's a
Oh,
hickory.
oh, that's a mocker nut, man. That's got some big old thick limbs. We're good.
Um, yeah, it's a nice thick lateral limb. It's good to roost on. I may even strut on it. Let's see. But
You you know what? I want one of those really big black gums, those lateral limbs.
yeah, I got a nice one of those in my yard. Um, anyway, you're talking about 4 studies, $4 million, and producing 4 really good, you'll probably have more papers per study than one,
Yeah, yeah,
but for
yeah.
really good peer-reviewed papers that focus on the main objectives that those studies set out to address, I'm very confident in saying that if we had those 4 papers, we would know why turkeys are declining like they are right now. And that
I agree.
sounds like a lot of money, right? To a lot of people, $1 million for 4 studies, that's $4 million. How much money have we spent on turkey research in the past 10 years collectively?
A lot
And
more than that.
I'm not downplaying any of that because I've been one of the ones spending that money.
Yeah, and a lot of great information has come from that work.
But if we had those 4 studies, I am confident not that we would necessarily reverse the decline because maybe what we found would take a long time to implement, or we may not be able to implement it at all for various
Yep.
reasons. But we would know what is happening.
I think we'd have a really good idea. I agree with that.
That's frustrating. That's frustrating to me.
Did it make your hair stand up?
It did a little bit. I feel I don't know, man. I'm ready for a fight right now. Like
You shook? You
yeah, I
shook?
am. Like I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. Like and I've been part of the problem too.
Yeah.
Like I haven't
No,
done
no,
that.
I have
So,
to.
but it's just frustrating to know that that is potentially what is standing between us and addressing this problem that so many are having right now.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to get that funded. Any one of those
It
ideas,
is.
especially because of the logistical problems that we have with all of them. But man, we gotta figure out a way. Maybe somebody will make a GoFundMe and everybody pitch in $10 and we can do one of them. Yeah, we got your research uh, donation account appended in the show notes. So, couple
Now all we
thousand $10
need,
contributions, we'll be able to not do any of them. That's what's frustrating, though. It's like, man, we just need to figure that out.
yeah,
And we've making strides at. I mean, uh, several of the big researchers in the field are making strides toward finding large scale funding opportunities to attack these kinds of questions.
yeah. In particular, there have been some really good harvest management papers here coming out
Yeah,
recently, and there's going to be some more in the near future.
yeah, I know.
Um,
Chamberlain and Collier
hmm
collaborated with Patrick on
right.
that regional, and they've got a lot of data that they between collaborations with several states that they've been doing some cool stuff with. We're hoping to have Patrick on soon to talk about that one that they just recently posted about. But and then you and I and several colleagues have been trying to get together to figure out a way to address the habitat
Yeah.
experiment at a large scale across many states. So
So we
that's
may be 5 or 6 years out from that one,
yeah. So,
having
but
results there.
there's a lot of snowballing going on multiple fronts, and I know the the other researchers through various combinations of collaborations have things brewing.
Right.
So hopefully we will see some of these things addressed. But
Yeah. Yeah. Some of them.
it is kind of wild. If we had those four, we'd probably have pretty good idea what's going on here.
We would.
Mm.
I mean, all we need is $1 from 4 million people.
So that seems actually doable. Well, one thing I've been working on, and shout out to these guys that made it happen. But I worked with a couple of local companies for various things, and maybe that's a path where we could do something like this. And maybe if folks out there own a company and you want to do this, I definitely think it is a good model. But essentially, they set it up where the purchases people could donate $1 or round up or whatever,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then they donated that, and it's going into our turkey project right now.
Yeah.
But like, if we could, we're going to have something like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
big companies giving people the opportunity to round up or
Yeah. Well, I mean, like,
GoFundMe or something. Because
state
I don't think,
wildlife agencies have carried most of the funding burden.
yeah,
For
and they're continuing to do that, and
they're
we're
continuing.
all very thankful that they're contributing
Absolutely.
that. But there's some issues that aren't. They're just not fundable for various
Yeah.
traditional mechanisms, or like for instance, with state agencies, it's really hard for them to support a multi-state project. They're sending state dollars. If they had to send state dollars outside of the state, that becomes difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
And then, federal opportunities are usually not focused on the same kinds of
Hmm.
issues.
Yeah.
Like if this was a migratory species, we'd be in a different boat.
Yeah.
But
Well, and then you go back.
we gotta get creative here.
Then you go back to the other issues like trapping and predator control, and states really don't put that as a high research priority. I mean, they're not going to dedicate $1 million of funding to that when they could, probably fund 4 $250,000 projects on other important issues. I mean, they have to spread that
Mm,
money across a wide variety of issues and a wide variety of species. And trapping, in most states, the way that the state agency is looking at it as, we try to empower the landowner, the land manager, the hunter to do as much of that work as they're interested in doing, but there's not much we can do beyond that. It's not something that we have as direct control over, like harvest management, right? So that's where they're probably going to prioritize their research funding allocations.
mhm. And
And
that
that's
makes sense. I mean,
that's understandable, but
they're trying to address a lot of issues.
those
But,
yeah,
but man, I want to address this turkey issue.
I know.
You know,
I know. Well, I wouldn't be
we
here
gotta
if I
get
didn't
creative.
too.
Do what?
I said I wouldn't be here recording with you if I wasn't in the same
I
boat.
know. We're spending a lot of time. I'm over here reading about dingoes and yellow baboons, and what? How does a yellow baboon tie in here? It's cited in the study. There you
Yeah,
go. So I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't be doing all that if I didn't really, really want to make this
that's
better.
right. That's right.
And I know that you're in the same boat. We both are passionate, and the audience is passionate. And I really appreciate all the support.
Hmm.
We wouldn't be able to do that
Yeah,
any of this without you guys.
for sure. You want me to lighten it up a little bit before we close?
Yeah.
I got a private message on Instagram that I found this morning, and it was one of our listeners reaching out, and he asked me, how many Alabamas is 64 geese?
Oh, somebody sent me that too. It's probably the same
Did
guy.
did we say that on the podcast? Did we say something about geese?
No, I
Where
didn't
did
say
they?
anything about it.
So he's
I
just
got the same message though.
yeah. So he's just being funny. I thought that's what he was doing, and I replied back to him, just deadpan. I said 0.00792. You have to convert to ganders, and then you go to Alabamas.
That's funny. Well,
Everybody knows there's an intermediate step there.
yeah. Have you not checked your conversion? Another positive note to leave on is so we've been plagued with weather problems in South Florida on that turkey project
Yeah.
because it only gets cold enough to trap like one day a year, and it also rains every day. So, and you can't trap when it's wet. Well, we finally
pulls
got
the feathers out.
we got a spurt of good weather. I'm gonna go down and be there all week with them, and we're gonna try to manage multiple crews to maximize our opportunity because we got turkeys all over bait. Well, they just caught some today, so that's the
Nice.
first group in a while because we haven't been able to trap because it was too hot, and then before that it was too wet, and it's just we finally got a window, and now they're making good on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about.
All right, we gotta go. I feel like this is another.
Yeah, this is
episode
gonna. I was about to digress. I'm glad you stopped me.
Yep. We'll digress in the next time.
Okay.
So, y'all
Thanks,
stay
everybody.
tuned. We'll see what Will has to digress on. So thanks for all the support, for all the ratings, taking our survey that's online. Glad you're still listening. We appreciate it. And let us know if you want to hear about something or have any questions.
Wild Turkey Science is part of the Natural Resources University podcast network and is made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow, a grassroots organization dedicated to the wild turkey. To learn more about TFT, check out turkeysfortomorrow.org.